Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another installment of Stop, Look, and Listen. This week, we are fortunate to have the Chief Operating Officer of the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina, Dr. Elijah Heyward III. How are you doing, Dr. Heyward?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you again.
Likewise.
All right. So, I'm from Beaufort, South Carolina, and you just happen to be from Beaufort, South Carolina as well. So just tell me about your upbringing and what you love so much about Beaufort, South Carolina.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you again for this opportunity. It's always great to have a chance to support, emerging projects like this. I know that you've been in the game for a long time, but in particular, it's just an honor to have this chance to commune, to share, and to hopefully uplift through this conversation. So just know how much I appreciate it. Beaufort is home. I mean, it's a really big part of who I am. I often tell people that it's my favorite place in the world for various reasons, because I think that it has a natural beauty that you find in few places. But that beauty is really something that emanates from the people. The fact that both sides of my family originate there makes it really special. And the fact that, too, you probably experienced this as well, it's a sense of welcome that you get from all parts of the community. And being a kid and being able to run freely, to wander into people's homes and yards and have a sense of embrace, but to also know that there's a level of consistency around values is something that I really greatly benefited from.
Yeah, it's definitely like a community atmosphere where if your child is acting up in a store, somebody else, has free reign to put you in place. Or if there's a cookout going on, you're showing up at somebody's cookout and you might have never met them in your entire life.
I was going to say, I think that's why I was always really careful about behaving, because I knew that my parents would find out. And if not my grandparents, aunts, uncles, someone would find out and it would make its way back home. So yeah, for sure.
So what part of Beaufort are you from?
Well, part of Beaufort, I say Coosaw, Sands Point. That's a community that both my parents are raised in. I grew up in, the city of Beaufort per se, but my roots are really in Coosaw and Sands Point, Coosaw Island.
Okay. And I'm a St. Helena baby, Scott Hill. Okay. Yeah. So speaking of your dad, Elijah Heyward Jr., he was a teacher at Battery Creek High School, which I attended, and he taught African American history. And I was in his class when Biggie Smalls, the news of his passing started to spread. And I could always remember, like, Dr. Heyward's dad was kind of short in stature, but he had this bushy mustache. And he would always encourage his students to love the skin that we're in and have pride in being Black, learn our history, go to college, become entrepreneurs and give back to the community. Talk about some of the values that he instilled in you.
My parents are my greatest influence, and I'm really grateful for their unconditional love and support. My father really inspired me, particularly through his passion for history. My father was very engaged as a community organizer, an educator, and entrepreneur. He's someone that started a group in the community that went around and helped folks with repairs in their homes. He founded a community center on Coosaw Island, the Coosaw Sands Point Community Center, which exists to this day, to allow a space for our community to get together for not only meetings around, activism and other things, but also a place for folks to have family reunions or wedding receptions, all of the above, to really inspire a level of connection. So I think that for me, my father has been an example of service, of giving back. His biggest lesson for me is just being a man of my word. So allowing for the things that I say to really be backed up by action. But also, to your point, it's really about, loving who you are, loving your history. And that history is one that I think is widely not really celebrated for the contributions related to entrepreneurship and empowerment of African Americans. So you always, champion the level of independence related to that, to know that we all have the same opportunity and options to make a difference, to make a way for ourselves. And we can look back to the generations before us to see how they were able to do it with limited resources. So given what we have by way of education, access, even more is attainable for us. And, I talk to my dad every day. He's my hero, someone who I love, but more importantly, it's amazing to know that he loves me. And having that type of support from both my mom and my dad has proved invaluable for me throughout my life.
Yes. Even after my time at Battery Creek, when I was a student at Winthrop University, whenever I was home visiting, and he owned that store on Ladies Island, I would pop in just to show my face and catch up every once in a while. So I miss those times.
Well, but I think that's powerful because, growing up in Beaufort, as you know, it's really powerful to be in a place that has so much legacy. One thing about the South and the African-American experience in the South is you have a very tangible connection to your past. So our connection is through land. So the land where that store is located is family land that's been in our family for generations. So my father's value was that, this is something that was passed down for generations for us to benefit from. And in that way, it becomes a part of our legacy of entrepreneurship, of giving back to the community in a particular way, but also just remembering the fact that so many of our forebears sacrificed so we can have a better future in a particular way. So thanks for supporting a vision for my father that really meant a great deal to him, but also our family.
Honestly, I was on a mad chase looking for him because it seemed like he left Battery Creek, or maybe teaching as a whole, like right after I took his class. And that used to be the talk around Battery Creek. What happened to Mr. Heyward? And then I just stumbled across him, at the store that he was running.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But let's get into, you ended up leaving Beaufort and attending Hampton University in Virginia. Just talk about the HBCU experience and advocate for future high school grads, what it would be like to attend an HBCU.
It's funny because there's I think one of the top recruits in basketball for the NCAA recently shared his desire to attend an HBCU. And I was really struck by that because I think that speaks to a very fascinating option that many people may not explore as fully in 2020, but one that I think is really worth having on the table. I think that anyone has to pick the institution that's best for them. And I think that might be, small, large, what have you, depending on the individual. For me, it was always important for me to attend an HBCU since the time I was a kid. My parents both attended South Carolina State University, and I grew up there on campus actually because I believe my dad was a student when I was born, and my mom went to school when I was a toddler, maybe 3 or 4. So I was always around state, and my earliest impression was of this really powerful environment where you see reflections of yourself, where you have a sense of community, where you have a sense of history that really spurs you into achievement in a particular way. So I always wanted to connect with that, and it was meaningful. And the older I got, the more I was exposed to options. I actually started writing schools in elementary school to get the catalogs and to read through them because I was that excited about going to college. And I think I had the intent of either going to Georgetown or Yale when my options opened up in high school. But then I had a conversation with my parents that really reminded me of my passion for HBCUs. And I'll say that it's probably the best decision that I made for myself for various reasons. For one, as someone that's really passionate about history, it's really amazing to be in a place where you see the legacy of African-American achievement and excellence reflected through the lineage of graduates. And that's a lineage for Hampton University that ties back to our hometown in Beaufort because the Penn School in Beaufort was a sister institution to Hampton University. So the president of Hampton University, Frizzell, you've heard of Frizzell Hall? was the chair of the board at Penn.
Mhm.
And instructors from Hampton would come to Penn to instruct. Folks from our community would go to Hampton. And there's this connection that's sustained for generations, which is really powerful. There's a shared model of industrial education that was seen as a pathway for access and equality for African Americans that both institutions had. And so as a high school student, my early volunteer experiences were at Penn Center at the museum. And I'll never forget the summer before I left for Hampton, I'm in the museum, I'm walking around, and I see Hampton Institute. And I was like, wow, here I am joining this legacy that is greater than me. And it felt like a really profound thing that I was walking into that became even more profound as a student at Hampton when I went to the archives there and did work there and saw the relationship even more become more of a powerful thing through just reading the letters and the documentation of what was sustained. So I think that Hampton was great, and I'll say that for me, the most powerful part of it was this very discrete thing, and that's the fact that we live in a world and society where race is a factor, and I think that for me, my parents did a really good job to not allow me to feel like I had any limitation on what I could achieve because of my race. But it was a factor, something to really think about. So, down the line, I asked my mom about, why she really felt good about Hampton. She said, well, for the first time in your life, you could just be a student. You could just be a student. You don't have to worry about all these other factors that you've been negotiating beyond that, but you have an opportunity to just be and learn and have this type of liberation. And I think for me, the fact that everyone from the president to the support staff was some reflection of me, my culture, my identity, really did something to really provide a sense of confidence, a sense of care and support, and a sense of community and connection that continues to feed me today. I was just on a call last night with alums from Hampton, and my best friends are to this day folks I met in college. So there's a way in which I really had an amazing experience, and I'll forever be grateful for Hampton and what the institution provided me.
So, side note, Hampton was my first choice.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I was gonna study music engineering and music business.
Nice.
But then I ended up shifting gears and attending Winthrop and studying mass communications, focus in broadcasting. But so
everything you're supposed to.
Exactly. So tell us about the bigger circle.
Man, you've done your research.
I mean, come on, libraries and mass communications. I mean,
no, it's powerful because the bigger circle is a club that my friends and I started, I believe our sophomore year at Hampton. John Biggers was a notable painter, muralist, who made a profound impact on the art world and had a really deep connection to Hampton University. If you go to our campus now, you'll see murals of his in really key places. And there's a way in which the museum became a home for me. Dr. Vanessa Thaxton Ward, who was formerly the director of the Penn Center Museum, was a staff member at the museum. So she was like, kind of like on a different world. You had Mr. Gaines.
Mm-hmm.
She was like that person who I could go to on campus just to check in, to give me a sense of groundedness, and to remind me of my values in a place where I was really growing exponentially. But the museum itself was just a really important thing because I would just go there just to get away. I would be inspired by the art. I would be really moved by the narratives of those who came before me. And I became a volunteer, a groupie, we'll say, and I found friends who had a similar passion. So we determined that it would be really powerful to create a club that would encourage student involvement in the museum. Because we found that, the museum was not really the cool place to hang out. Folks would go to the student center and other places, but the museum would be empty in the middle of the day unless you were there for an assignment. And what the disservice is the fact that Hampton probably has one of the best collections of African-American art in the country. And you could go to Hampton and be a student and not know that, by virtue of not really engaging the institution. So we wanted to change that. And we were able to get it started. To this day, the club is still around. I think there were like close to 100 members when we last checked, which is great because only 4 of us started out. And I think the most important thing is that it allows for us to preserve a part of our cultural identity in a way that hopefully will extend to the other parts of just the experience itself.
Okay. So your capstone project, Saving the Young Black Male, how do we accomplish it?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I was raised with the responsibility to give back. And, you know, for me, giving back has always been through service, through mentoring, all the above. And I think that there are ways in which I've always felt, it's hard to describe, but, you know, I feel lucky in a sense. I've been fortunate to have great parents, a great upbringing, but for every me, there's so many other people who may not have had the same advantages. And, you know, it's a situation that is unfair and that I've always been committed to helping to shift and change in my own way. So my capstone project was really based on this whole idea that there's an achievement gap that exists in America. And African American men in particular have a greater likelihood of being a part of the cradle to prison pipeline, of not having the same economic attainment or educational attainment as their white counterparts. And I wanted to be a part of that shift. And so for me, my Honors College capstone was an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet in that direction. Down the road, it led to direct work and project. But at that time, it was really an opportunity to explore what would be the difference that could be made. And I think for me, mentors, you know, having parents that had high standards, but give me the love and support to achieve those standards, and just being aware of the cultural history and lineage that I'm a part of were all factors that really played a key part. So that's what the capstone explored. And it was great because it was my first foray into producing. I produced a mini film to frame the capstone. I did a little art project that was a part of it too. And it was really an early opportunity for me to consider tangible approaches to how cultural institutions in general can play a role in really reshaping communities in a positive way.
Sounds good. So I'm going to kind of skip over the experience at Yale and the Divinity School and kind of move towards UNC Chapel Hill, where we first met. So quick story, I'm working in Wilson Library on the campus of the UNC Chapel Hill, working the front desk on this particular day. Dr. Heyward comes in and he shows his ID, which is part of the check-in process. And I pull it up on the computer and I see Elijah Heyward III from Beaufort, South Carolina. And I do a double take because I was like, this name sounds familiar. So I see that he's from Beaufort and I ask him, I was like, do you know Elijah Heyward? He used to teach at Battery Creek High School back in the 90s. And Dr. Heyward, he was like, yeah, that's my dad. And I was like, what? I was stunned. So we chatted briefly and like you told me that you were studying American studies and focusing on the Gullah Geechee culture, which Wilson Library has the papers for Penn School. And I was flabbergasted because I don't think I'd ever met someone from Beaufort at UNC Chapel Hill. And at the time I was in the area for about 10 years.
Wow.
So just talk about deciding to pursue your doctorate at UNC Chapel Hill and the experience, you know, seeing our papers at UNC Chapel Hill instead of Charleston or Beaufort.
I'll just say that day was really powerful for me because, you know, I was away from home, working on a very rigorous endeavor in the PhD. And, you know, it really felt good to meet someone from home that really, could kind of appreciate a lot of the things I hold to be true as far as values. And the fact that you had a connection to my father really meant a great deal as well. So I remember giving him a call to tell him after that encounter.
Right.
But it was interesting because really quick, I started a nationwide college access program inspired by the capstone project that I did at Hampton. I got funding at Yale to build it out. Lived in DC for about 5 years to run it, and changed a lot of lives with the help of so many people. And a big part of that was really the centrality of what we both know to be true: communities. The whole adage that it takes a village to raise a child. So, what does it mean to have a village of museums and schools, as far as colleges and mentors, as an ecosystem to support young people and helping them to understand the expansive opportunities before them? I wanted to test that out and see what it was about, and it was great to have an opportunity to do that. But it also led me to consider what more could be done if I invested in myself through education, particularly through pursuing a PhD. So in thinking about options, UNC was a leading opportunity for me as far as an institution to partner with in that endeavor, because of the fact that the pen papers were based there. So that was one thing that really piqued my interest. But beyond that, the more and more I learned about the institution, it being rooted in the South, which is really important to me because my value is how our stories are told in a greater context. So for me, I'm a scholar of the South with a particular focus on the Black experience, because I think that we have to be a part of the narrative. We have to be at the table. And for far too long at Hampton and other places, I read books about myself, about my culture, identity as a Gullah Geechee native, that was not written by someone from my community. So it's important to be in a situation where I can provide a voice to not take away from the research that's being done, but to add to it in a way that advances it in a powerful and profound way. So UNC really created a great opportunity for that, because there's a Center for the Study of the American South, there's the archives, but more importantly, there is a collaborative spirit amongst these schools and professors, institutions, that all are at our disposal to really create the best research, but more importantly, prepare us to be the practitioners that are out in the field making a difference. So, I think my first introduction to UNC is my uncle, Bernard McIntyre, who attended as an undergrad. And then Bill Keyes, who is a founder of the Institute for Responsible Citizenship, was the person that drove me down to UNC when I was there to really pound the pavement to figure out whether I pursue history, American studies, what are my options. And in that experience, I met Bill Ferris, who to this day remains a mentor and great champion for the work that I've committed my career to, as far as just preserving, promoting African-American culture and identity.
I love Bill as well. We've had many conversations, and he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, and I think what I respect most about him is that, he modeled the type of scholarship or type of scholar that I wanted to be. Because I think there's one thing to be an academic who is, very focused on, the academy and the ivory tower. Mm-hmm. But his work is such that it's really engaged, and it's one that's meant to connect with people. It's one that is meant to, be engaged through the arts. So exhibits, documentaries, public program, all these ways in which the scholarship that can be a bit, of a distancing factor is made to be more personal in a profound way. So, it was great to have so many professors like him as a part of my journey at UNC and beyond, to really help to bring my own vision for what scholarship can be to life.
Right. And a special shout out to his daughter, Virginia Ferris, who's a rising star in the ranks of archives at NC State University. Yeah. So you published and presented on contemporary Gullah and Geechee culture. Define that.
Growing up in the South, there's a way in which I did not see very many representations of myself. There's a way in which, there are a few different frames of reference. One is a tourist frame of reference, where there is a glorification of the plantation South, one that really marginalizes the Black experience to enslavement, captivity, servitude. And I think that there's a way in which it was important to complicate that, because Gullah Geechee identity can be kind of locked in that frame. And it doesn't allow for there to be much discussion about the contemporary manifestations of our cultural identity, and particularly practice. When I was in college at Hampton, my father sent me the front page of USA Today, and it had a list of, I don't quote me on the number, but maybe like the 7 things on the verge of extinction. So it had like, natural places like forests and, the Everglades, maybe things like that, but it had Gullah people. So the one, human group on that list was my cultural identity. And I said, okay, I understand that the culture is shifting. I understand that there are resonances of it that have gone away, but I'm still alive and true and real, as are my family and friends who still have a strong tie to this shared identity that continues to shape ourselves, but also our community and country. And that kind of sparked something in me. So I would say that contemporary Gullah Geechee identity is such that, it is complicated, which is good because we need to complicate the narrative. It is robust and real because there's so many values that I hold to be true that go back to the way in which I was raised, my parents, grandparents, all the above. But there's also a spiritual power and connection that has sustained us as a community that we tap into through the practice of worship, but also the communion of food and connection and commitment to this mutual success and identity that is not distinct to Gullah Geechee people, but is done in a way that's very distinct, that is worth honoring, documenting, and preserving for the future.
Okay. So now let's get into your current role as the COO of the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. Could you just speak on like the origins and how the concept of the museum came into play, and why Charleston?
Well, I'll say this, I'm a part of a great team, and I want to just honor the work of not only the team and my colleagues at the International African American Museum, but also our amazing board and all the early people who are named and unnamed that were part of this process of envisioning what this institution is becoming before our eyes. The vision for the International African American Museum was cast by Mayor Joseph P. Riley. Mayor Riley read the book Slaves in the Family by Edward Ball, and he was really transformed by a depiction of Charleston in the frame of the slave trade and child slavery that was really horrific, we'll say. And he felt a need and commitment to doing something about it. So the museum became this vision to really tell this story, but also to really honor the legacy of African Americans in America in a way in which it hadn't been done before. Your question about why Charleston, well, I think there are a few reasons why. Charleston is the single greatest point of entry for enslaved Africans in the country. So 48.1% of all enslaved people who came to America came through Charleston. So we argue that in light of that, every African American in America can trace at least one relative to Charleston. Beyond that, there are few institutions that are actually based at the site where the history happened. So on our site, you can see the pathway that slave ships took to come to America. You see Fort Sumter, where the Civil War started. You see Sullivan's Island, the point of quarantine for slave ships and captives before they made it to our site, where the former Gadsden's Wharf, where they were sold and many died. So there's a way in which Charleston becomes a focal point of American history. And what we're doing is reclaiming that focal point to celebrate and honor the African American experience and journey. There's so many untold stories related to the African American experience. And I think one of the more poignant ones is the fact that, the African American experience didn't start in America. It didn't start with slavery. It started with the robust, the vibrant, the beautiful, the dynamic civilizations in Africa, in West Africa in particular, that many people, where we came from. So we were fully realized individuals, scholars, artisans, folks with families before, the trade changed all that by stealing us away from what we knew to be home. And so there's a way in which we want to start there by honoring the fact that African Americans had a memory and legacy before America that continues to be informed through the traditions and culture such like Gullah Geechee, identity, in the ways in which, we still live out a lot of these traditions through various ways. So, there's no other place to tell the story because it's where the history happened. And it's where we want to bring, Americans to come, we want to encourage them to really visit and connect, because there's a way in which we hope we will become a point of pilgrimage for all Americans to really understand American history in a better way by honoring the legacy of African Americans and our profound contributions to America and beyond.
Okay. So how do you plan on, like, from a curatorial perspective, balance placing emphasis on memorializing enslavement while also telling the untold stories of the African American journey in its totality?
It's a complex endeavor, and it's one that we will do our best to get right. I think that we have to tell the unvarnished truth of history. There's no way to get around the racial terror and the horrors of slavery, and even beyond slavery, that continue to inform our society today. So that we have a commitment to presenting a truth that we think is really important for all Americans to really understand. But beyond that, though, there's some beauty there, because for every enslaved person that was physically captive on the plantation, there is the enslaved person, or very same person rather, who was not captive because their spirit was free, who found a way to have the mental dexterity and the connection to a greater ideal or hope for their future that would be lived out through future generations like ours, through the spirit, through the hopes, the aspirations. The whole notion of liberation is something that is really profound to explore, because, despite being captive, we express ourselves through profound ways, through worship, through the artistic outputs, like this piece that David Driscoll did behind me, that really honors these connections to our roots that were able to be made and preserved despite the limitations of where we are. I wrote a paper once on the whole notion of the early curators and how, we didn't have very, very many options on plantations or even beyond that, but we were able to curate a life for ourselves through what we did and how we create a sanctity or sacred sanctuary rather for ourselves in light of the conditions beyond our control. So I would say that, there's the harsh reality of the slave trade and slavery. There's also the beauty of ingenuity and of consistency of preservation that also comes out in ways we want to honor through resilience and even resistance. These can be seen as acts of resistance. What does it mean to resist in a way to create a cultural output that becomes a legacy for your future generations? Or to make up in your mind that despite limitations of society, you will still determine a way to, create a freedom, a sense of education, a sense of opportunity for future generations to live into. And I think that there's a beauty in exploring that alongside the terror and the harsh realities, because it gives me hope to know that, my great-great-great-grandparents, despite what they endured, dreamed of a day where I could be where I am, and I always want to honor that, live into that. And as an institution, we're committed to honoring them, but also helping others to understand why so much of this reality of inequity is rooted in something really powerful and real. And we have a commitment to changing that.
Okay, amazing. So when does the International African American Museum plan to open?
2022, early 2022. We're currently under construction. Things are moving forward. I'm so grateful to the hard work of the team day in and day out. They're really doing their part to bring this vision to life.
Okay. So before I let you go, I wanted to touch on, I mean, since you're in Charleston, the significance of what took place 5 years ago at Mother Emanuel Church. We both had somewhat of a connection with Reverend Clementa Pinckney. And from what I'm hearing, that situation sort of changed your course of research.
Yeah, without a doubt. I like to say that Reverend Dr. Pinckney was Barack Obama before we knew who he was in South Carolina. My mom ran a high school program that he was a part of. So from the time I was really young, I knew about him. I had a hard time pronouncing his name as a kid, but he was someone who was kind of like an example of what we could do, or who we could be. I remember that he was a young preacher. He got into the state house at a young age.
Yeah, 23. I remember. I was so this is how I know him. I was interning at WJWJ TV in
Nice.
Beaufort, South Carolina.
LWJ.
And yes.
Yeah.
And he was running for a local office in Jasper County, South Carolina. And we did an interview with him. And he's like 23 years old.
Yeah.
Wise, well beyond his years. And I was impressed. And then on the local radio stations, you would hear his ads, and all you could hear from Mrs. Galloway, who ran the radio station at the time, was Reverend Clementa Pinckney. Reverend Clementa Pinckney. That's all you could hear the entire ad. And it sticks with you 25 years later. So yeah, that's how I remember Reverend Pinckney.
Well, you can imagine being a kid and seeing that image. I think that representation matters. And there's a way in which when you see examples of who you can be, it sticks with you from an early age. That's one reason why I'm such a big proponent of art, because art, particularly African-American art, allows for us to have examples and an opportunity to really see reflections of our traditions and our experiences that hopefully will empower and inspire us for the future. So knowing him and seeing him as a kid really had a profound impact on me. And my mom was really intent that I would be on track to understand what it meant to be a 23-year-old, state representative, or, whatever he was doing. I remember when he graduated from college and all the above. So you might imagine how I felt the night of the shooting. I was at home. Actually, no. Well, Charleston is home, but I was with my aunt, also my godmother in Charleston, and I just remember we were watching TV together, and she got a phone call, and we changed the channel where they're doing a live, I guess.
Cutting.
Yeah, from downtown. Mm-hmm. And the story was unfolding before our eyes. And I remember reaching out to my friend whose father and mother were at the church an hour before the shooting happened. And he was saying that, despite what you hear on TV, it's far worse. Because at the time, no one was reported dead, and we didn't know what was actually going on. And, I get kind of emotional thinking about it because so much of my life has been lived with a commitment to service. I went to divinity school, and I've taught Bible study and Sunday school more times than I can name. So the fact that he was murdered, serving, particularly serving in a context that was really familiar to me, in a place where I've always felt safe, really was really tough. And the fact that this was yet another example of racial terror for us to really be reminded of in our country was also profound in the Southern context. So I think that, I've always, I don't know, it's a tough thing to really grapple with that really has impacted me today. But at the time, I shifted my research to really explore contemporary Gullah Geechee identity in the wake of the shooting, because it was a way for me to not only process my own grief, but to also make sense of something that to this day remains really hard to grapple with.
Yes. I mean, I've been to Charleston a few times since then, and yeah, I'm not trying to visit the site at all. I'm staying away. Like I said, prayers to the families of those that we lost, and the healing continues.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think that's one reason why this institution means so much because, it's a place of a great level of it's a heavy topic that we do broach. We also want to be a place of healing. And,
Mhm.
I think that, if we do our job right, people will have both the conviction from the experience, but also walk away with a level of peace by virtue of just the space we offer for just contemplation and everything beyond.
All right. So, would you like to plug the website or anything else you have going on? Are you planning
Yeah,
on publishing any books or anything like that in the future?
yeah, for sure, for sure. I'll be back in touch when that happens. It'd be really good to um, make my contribution in that way, around solidifying this whole notion of contemporary Gullah Geechee identity from a Native perspective. But I'll just say that, our museum is we're inviting everyone to join us on this journey. Our mission is to honor the untold stories of the African American journey at one of our nation's most sacred sites. And this journey is one that has been 20 years in the making, and it continues today, and it will continue beyond our lifetime. And so we invite everyone to join the journey and to really, join us in making this happen because it takes a village to make anything possible. But in this instance, when we open, there'll be thousands of people who've all contributed in ways big and small. And I'm not just talking about money, but who contribute in ways big and small to make our institution a reality. And so we enlist the prayers, support, but also just your engagement in any level that makes sense, through any resources that make sense as well. Our website is www.iaamuseum.org, and there you can find additional information about our journey and an opportunity to join us in a particular way.
Well, Dr. Heyward, I just like to say we're proud of you as a village, the village that we both came from.
Yeah.
We're proud of you. I know your dad is proud of you, your mom. You are on a fast track to superstardom, and your head and your heart is in the right place. And I know that with the community behind you, you will never sway. And as long as you stick to those guns, you're in good hands. So continue. Oh, go
That,
ahead.
that's a very generous thing to say, and then thank you for saying that because I honor you, I honor what you're doing, and I really respect you seeing value in this opportunity for us to engage in this platform. I take no credit for anything. I'm a vessel of God, person of faith, and if anything, I'm a reflection of all of the love and support of all the people who raised me. And this community that we both come from is all that really matters to me by virtue of just making them proud. And I just feel really fortunate to just have this opportunity to do just that.
Well, like I said, any opportunity I have to spotlight success stories from my hometown, especially, then I'm going to do so. So once my interview with Jonathan Green concluded and he suggested you, and it was automatic. Like I was going to have to find you on Instagram or wherever so we could catch up. So like I said, continued growth, and I'm looking forward to when the museum finds. All right, so for Stop, Look, and Listen, this is LaTroy Gardner signing off. See you next week.
Hey everybody, my name is Cammie, and thank you so much for watching our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe for more great content, and don't forget to check us out on social media at GOB Radio Network.